Welcome to the Dogtor Bros, where we have an honest discussion about vet life in and out of the clinic. My name is Brandon. I'm your doc of the day and your guide through this episode. I'm a small animal internal medicine focused veterinarian living in Colorado, and I'm here with my closest friends from vet school.
Hey, this is Jeff. I'm a veterinary dermatologist in Louisville, Kentucky.
Hey, this is Adam. I'm a relief veterinarian in Louisville, Kentucky.
Hey, this is Chris. I'm a GP in Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
And today we're doing something a little different. We are going to be doing I guess you can say a new little series. We decided to try out doing like a tier ranking of different things related to veterinary medicine. Today's episode is going to be focused on tier rankings of pain medications in vet med. There are a variety of them. They each have their place, but we'll kind of let you know how we would rank them as far as top tier versus bottom tier. If anyone has ever seen any other like tier ranking type things, there's a variety of them in different spaces across the internet, including YouTube especially. But S tier would be like our top tier. And then we kind of go from there, A tier, B tier, C tier. You can keep going. We're just going to stick with A, B, C, and then S tier will be at the top. So our opening question is kind of going to be a little test of this. We'll do a quick tier list of just a couple of things, life stages essentially. So this is to open to everybody. We can have a really brief discussion about it. Tier list of high school, undergrad, vet school, and adult life. So just think about that for a quick second and let me know how each of you would rank them.
This is Adam. I'll jump in here. It's funny you bring this up because I was actually speaking with my wife the other day, Allison, about this, who's also a vet, and just kind of talking about, she actually asked me this exact question, like, what would you say was the best point of time in your life thus far? And we both agreed that vet school was probably the top of our list. It was just an awesome time to where stay with me. It was just an awesome time to where we just had a really close-knit community of friends. We all lived close together. We all got along super well. Studying was a lot. Vet school itself was a lot, but we did it together and it was still fun getting through it and powering through it. So yeah, I personally would probably rank this in the order of vet school number one. Next would probably be adult life. I am in a really good place right now with my career and with my family and my kids. And, I'm really happy with where things are at now. And then between undergrad and high school, I'd probably go undergrad because that was a pretty fun time. And then high school was okay, but that'll probably make the bottom of this list for me.
Really quick before we move on, JT, you may have picked up on this, but like the top tier one was this period when there were no kids, but he also had the love of his life in his life. So, did that ring any bells?
That was
telling.
Coincidental.
telling.
I am not saying I enjoyed my life before kids. That was not more than I do now. That was not.
I mean, it's your ranking list, man.
That was not the intent of that ranking, and I was worried that was the spin it was going to have. I take it all back. I'm happy.
That's what kids are my world. Your wife decided. That's crazy. It is what it is. I get it. This is Jeff. I can go. I would say I'm like jumping back and forth between our recording and the list. Make sure the list. The bottom is Brandon. I'm not supposed to use S, A, B, C. C being the lowest.
If you'd like to, this one's kind of just like just in order of whatever you'd like. We'll do the more formal thing for the next stuff.
All right. I'll be quick then. I'll say high school's at the bottom. Right above that, I would put vet school because vet school was hard as shit and I had a hard time. I didn't have the best time, but I met the best people. Then right above that, I'll put undergrad because I loved undergrad. Less hard, more fun, more freedom, and that. I think undergrad's at the top, and then adult life is somewhere in the middle. I think I would put it edging slightly above vet school, but only because now that I have a big boy job, I'm happier with making more money instead of being like perpetually broke. But it's kind of ghetto over here. So that's how I feel. Like paying bills is not a good time. But when you have excess income, that's kind of fun.
This is Chris. I don't really know how to rank this the best because I had the same thought process as Adam, but then I also had the same thought process as Brandon and JT about the no kids part of things too.
It's a trap, Chris. It's a trap.
So safe answer is adult life. There we go. Actually, I did have a kid in vet school, so we could be safe in there too.
That's true.
That's true.
Yeah.
You did on Navly Day.
Yeah, but I would say, I mean, y'all have their different pros and cons. I'm kind of torn between, vet life and adult life are pretty much like even keel for me. The difference is, like Adam said, like the social aspect of like I could literally like drive to one of your guys' houses in 2 minutes and be there, and we can be hanging out and doing whatever, whether it be watching football, studying, or Mario Kart. Like could happen pretty much any night. Like, what are you doing? I don't know. I don't feel like studying anymore. Let's go hang out. And that's like, I do miss that part of it. But like JT said, like adult life has money. So those are kind of even tier. Undergrad was great. Didn't really have any issues there. High school was, I mean, it's high school. I don't think it was high school. I mean, it's the bottom.
For me, it's very simple. This is Brandon again. It's just at the bottom, high school, then undergrad, vet school, and then adult life. I'm really enjoying myself right now. Thinking back, like when I made this list, I could have split adult life into like kind of first year of work with like for you guys versus like internship / residency. We'd probably put that little aspect of our life at a lower tier.
Rotating internship solidly at the bottom.
But
in fact, it's in hell.
Yeah. You'd be surprised. Like I'd put internship above high school, actually. I had a really good intern group and made really good friends there that I'm friends with today. But yeah, I mean, undergrad and high school, or undergrad and vet school are pretty close, but I felt like we had a little bit more close-knit group in vet school, and I was just happy to be in vet med finally. But adult life is definitely where it's at right now. So, well, great. Thanks, guys, for sharing. But let's just jump right into this. So the whole idea is pain medications. Some of these medications that I've listed have other uses as well, as many of our medications do. My goal with this is to just talk about like each medication. We'll put them we'll agree upon where they go in this tier list, and we'll see where everything ends up. And if there's anything that we feel like is missing from the list that I'm about to read out, please let me know. So on the list of medications, I have steroids, NSAIDs or non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, opioids, monoclonal antibodies. So specifically for this one, this would be like the newer drugs on the market, Solensia or Librela, which are primarily right now designed for osteoarthritis in dogs and cats. And then there's other drugs, gabapentin or pregabalin. They're kind of in the same group. Tramadol, which is an older one. And then Dasequin, which is really more of a supplement, but I put it in there. So, and Dasequin, I'm saying the brand name, but what would be the generics that were actually accurate here?
Joint supplement, fish oil.
Just joint. Yeah. Okay. Oh, glucosamine. That's what I'm thinking of. Okay, great. So how about we just start with that one? We've all kind of recommended this. I give, full disclosure, I give glucosamine supplements to my dogs. I personally don't feel like they're doing a whole lot, but I know that they do promote joint health and have a place. What are your guys' thoughts?
This is Adam. quickly going through this list, just like real quick, my first initial thought, like I had like kind of a rough estimate on each one, and then I got to Dasequin or glucosamine chondroitin, and I kind of hit a quick pause, and I was like, well, hold on now. And my mind was kind of shuffling this one specifically, just because I feel like initially I was putting it kind of towards the bottom of the list, but I kind of slowly am working it up the list a little bit, solely because kind of our other drugs on this list, I feel like, are more of like a sprint, whereas glucosamine chondroitin is more of a marathon. So, something like the steroids or NSAIDs or opioids, those are coming into play when they're already having pain and already having issues. And I recommend them getting on something like a glucosamine or chondroitin early. I mean, especially if it's a large breed dog and we know they're going to have issues down the road, starting them on that young, 1, 2, 3 years old, and giving it daily so that we can delay that breakdown of those joints and, kind of delay us having to give things like the other drugs on this list. So because of that, more of a marathon than a sprint, in that aspect, I'd probably put it like maybe a little higher on the list. But in that respect as well, it is tough to measure efficacy. That would be long-term studies. I mean, you need full life studies for that type of research.
I really like where you're coming from there, because I did not think about it that way, and you've actually convinced me. Another part of that too, and just to remind everyone, S tier would be top, A just below that, and then B, and then C. Like my initial thought was C tier as well. The nice thing with these supplements too is like there's not really any thought behind giving them. They're very easy to give. They're normally in a treat form. They're safe. Whereas a lot of these other drugs that we're going to talk about, they have their own side effects or other things. If you had to place it in these tiers now, Adam, what would you initially think about putting it in?
Maybe in like the A tier.
Wow.
Towards the top, maybe not the top, but, kind of up there. Again, just thinking about that, because obviously there's a lot of different ways we could think about each of these drugs and how we could categorize them. But again, just thinking of that more of a preventative than a management. So thinking about it that way, I would maybe put it A.
This is Jeff. I'm going to put Dasequin solidly in C for the exact reasons that Adam is saying. Because when I think about something that's going to be, for the sake of this list, we're talking about pain meds and pain control. I think it does live better in supplemental therapeutics, adjunctive care, things you can add on that aren't going to hurt anything. But I feel like I don't use it that often, but many of my patients are on it. In dermatology world, just coming from GPs, I definitely did prescribe it or use it when I was a GP because it was like this can't hurt, but it just doesn't have good pain control for the sake of this list. So I feel like it's not going to stand up to the others. So for me, it's a C.
And while I'll just throw in mine, I was C tier as well. I'm just after discussion, like Adam's points, I'm leaning towards more of a B tier, personally. Well, what about you, Chris?
You stole my answer. It was going to be a B for me, just from what Adam was saying and what JT. It's not the. I don't know. People ask like, "Oh, should I start supplements?" I'm like, yes, but just I tell them like it's not going to be like night and day differences. Like this is the long game. It's all part of multimodal treatment for joint health and treating and helping with arthritis. And it's not just the end all be all. So I'm going to put it in B tier, especially too, because it's like you guys said, it's so safe. You don't even have to worry. Like when they give it, like I've never had a dog overdose on, hey, you gave it too much glucosamine, like it's going to get some diarrhea. So from like a safety point, and then like it should help a lot. Yeah, B tier sounds like a safe answer.
All right. Well, with the average, that would be a B tier for sure. And just, this is just a side note. If there's like a veterinary anesthesiologist listening in that's like, they didn't list this drug or that drug or the other drug, I don't have all the drugs, unfortunately, but we're going to work with what we've got here, because these, I would say, are like the most commonly used classes of drugs that we're like are in practice right now, at least. Moving on to, everyone remembers using tramadol maybe at some point.
Mm-hmm.
What are y'all's thoughts?
This is Chris. I put it in the C tier, or I wouldn't even put it in a tier. I barely use it. We have maybe 2 clients now whose dogs actually use it, and they actually seem to do better on it. But I don't. I mean, we used to use it all the time when I first came out of vet school, and then it quickly switched to gabapentin. But yeah, it's a controlled substance. It has, not very good results in working well in dogs. So I go with C tier.
Yeah, I want to say there's like a study that saw like it was like 10% of dogs benefited from it as far as pain relief is what the numbers were. For cats, I have a hard time saying. But just really quickly, I agree with you. C tier.
Yeah, this is Adam. You just like you said, Brandon, I was going to reference a CE I went to one time where they had said that 90% of dogs don't have the receptors required to be effective with tramadol. Just like Chris, coming out of vet school, I used it a fair amount for pain management, and in the past few years, I could probably count on one hand the number of times I've prescribed it. And usually when I have in the past couple of years, it's because the dog has been on it and the owner says it's helping the dog. And so if it's not broke, don't fix it kind of thing. If it's given the dog some relief, at least in the owner's mind, then yeah, for sure. I want to keep that pet comfortable and keep that owner happy. Even early on, efficacy wise, I feel like it has a pretty broad dosage range too. So it's kind of hard to find that sweet spot. And I feel like it was either ineffective or they just kind of got real loopy on it. And so it was tough to really tell, is it really helping with pain management, or are they just kind of so out of it that, they don't really notice the pain. So yeah, I would definitely put it in the C tier as well. I again, hardly reach for tramadol these days.
Yeah, this is Jeff. I'm not going to beat around the bush. It's a hard C for me for all of the aforementioned reasons.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I think we kind of came into practice after vet school, like right as tramadol was starting to be kind of phased out as the go-to post-operative drug, which was interesting. Because I just remember like some of the older school vets like, oh yeah, tramadol like for X amount of time post-op. And really it was probably the anti-inflammatories that were doing all the work at the time whenever they went home with pain meds. So you guys had mentioned gabapentin being like a drug that's now used more commonly for post-operative pain. And I've used it myself for a variety of other reasons. What are y'all's thoughts on gabapentin or pregabalin if you've used that very similar drug?
This is Chris. I know now they're not saying it works as well for pain control. It might just make them more sedated. So I don't know. I'd have to read more on it, but I know I don't think anything has been said that it's actually had any actual decrease in pain, but it works well post-operatively. Dogs seem to do well. Cats seem to do well with it. It also is a sedative. So maybe they're just getting that more effect and it's helping out. So I use it also as it's super safe. I can give it and it can help out with pain control pretty well. So I'm going to say I like it a lot just from how safe it is. I'm going to give it an A tier. And for how often we use it, it seems to do pretty well. But I don't know. I think there needs to be more research on how well it does for pain control wise. But I'm going to give it an A tier.
This is Adam. Yeah, for gabapentin, I've seen that as well, Chris, that there has started to be some question in the pain control management of it. Is it more of just a mild sedation that we're getting with it? I use it a fair amount in cats in terms of anti-anxiety for clinic visits, that sort of thing. In terms of pain management with gabapentin, I personally mostly use it as an adjunct. So first line steroids or NSAIDs, and plus or minus gabapentin. Is usually how I do things. It's usually not the first thing I grab for. So because of that, I would, for me at least, probably put it in the lower A to upper B tier. Probably B is where I would put gabapentin. It is very safe. I do like that aspect of it. But just because it has started to be some questioning about its pain management effects, and the fact that it's more of a second thought for me, in terms of pain management. For me personally, I'd probably put it in the B tier.
And this is Brandon again. I'd probably put it in A tier, mainly because I agree with you, Adam. Like I use it more adjunctively for the types of pain that we typically prescribe it for. When it comes to things like neuropathic pain or spinal pain, nerve pain, that kind of stuff, it actually has a really good use for that. And in chronic pain, generally speaking, it can be like if there's like some aspects of things like wind up pain or other stuff, it can be helpful. So I would put it in A for the reasons being like, again, safety profile. I don't like that it causes sedation. That is one side effect that I don't like. When we're using it in cats, like there is maybe some pain benefit in those like osteoarthritic cats, but it also has that anxiety relieving property too, which is nice. But yeah, it's definitely not like top of the line. It's used very often. I believe it's controlled in a couple of states, but most places it's not controlled.
Kentucky is one of those.
Yeah, when I practice, it's not controlled.
It's starting to be in North Carolina. Like they just passed it. Like this year, we have to start scripting it. Not scripting it out, but our DEA has to be associated with it now.
Gotcha. That's interesting. I wonder if that'll change here. The other part of it too that we hadn't touched on is that it's an every 8-hour medication if you're going to be using it effectively, which is hard for owners. So that is tricky. Is that where your thoughts were, Jeff?
This is Jeff. I have never prescribed it to. Not never. I so rarely prescribe it TID. So to answer the question where we would put it, like I would put it. I was leaning dangerously close to an S, but I think I'm going to leave it A because for the versatility of it. So for pain control, I agree with what everybody said. Like I think it does. It's debatable, and we don't have enough research to show like how much is it controlling that pain. And then I love neuropathic pain. I actually think I get a lot of that with some of my ear cases. I anecdotally feel like it's been really beneficial for me, and it's usually safe with anything else that I'm using, which we'll get to my favorite one on this list shortly, I'm sure. So I'll save that, but I'll say like I often been using one of my faves with a little GABA, and it's probably the combination that's helping. But I think also sedating and calming some of my patients has been really beneficial. So for me, an A.
Cool. No, I like that. I agree. I think we all agree A overall. Moving on. These monoclonal antibodies, so Silencia, Librela. What are y'all's thoughts? I'm going to lean on the GP side more so for this because I don't use it very much at all.
This is Adam. So I've used both of these a fair amount. Silencia has been around a little bit longer than Librela. Silencia, I have seen some really great things with cats that clients don't even really fully realize how severe it is with their cats. The cat's just kind of walking around the house and the owner doesn't notice too much. And we give a Silencia and all of a sudden they're jumping up on counters and climbing the cat tree and chasing their toys. And like the owners are like, wow, I didn't even realize how bad it had gotten because, cats can hide things pretty well. And then we give that Silencia and they're like a completely different cat. So I've seen some really good things with Silencia. Librela, a little bit newer of a drug. I've been using it a fair amount over the past year or so. On honestly, in the cases I've used it, it's really been kind of hit or miss. I've seen some that the owners say they're a brand new dog. They're, running around like a puppy. I've seen some where they say, we're a little bit better, but, still not great, but better. And then I've had some where I've given it and they're like, no change. They're really no improvement. So that's just what I'm seeing, kind of out in the field, in general practice. I do like the safety aspect of these. I know that there were some potential questions with Librela. One, in humans, you have to worry about conjunction with use of Librela and NSAIDs. They haven't really seen that in dogs with concurrent use. But personally, I try to limit that concurrent use. And then there was some contraindications with certain neurological conditions not to give it. But for the most part, very safe drug. Same with Solensia, very safe drug. So their safety profile kind of bumps them up a little bit too for me. So I would probably put these somewhere in the A-ish range just because I have seen some really good responses with them. Again, Librela is maybe what's holding me back a little bit just because for me personally, it's been kind of hit or miss. But the safety aspect and the fact that, I have seen pretty good response to it, probably mid to upper A tier for me.
And this is Chris. I pretty much agree with everything Adam says there. I put it in the A tier. I guess if it worked more rapidly, it would definitely be an S tier, but it does have varying, how long does it take to work? And everyone always asks, and I'm like, it can take 4 days to 2 injections or 2 months. So it just depends on how it responds. So I always tell people give it at least a couple shots to see what happens. But overall, Solensia definitely have had more night and day results with people, kind of like Adam alluded to. And then Librela overall, I would say it works very, few say it doesn't do anything. Most say it does something. And then we had the fewer, I have a brand new puppy in the dog's 12. So yeah, overall A tier.
And this is Jeff. So I have adjunct side, not usage really, but my patients have been on it. I don't carry or prescribe Solensia or Librela, but there was interestingly a study showing that about 24% of cats on Solensia have had some head and neck pruritus that's been pretty extreme. So it's just worth being aware of and looking out for, because in derm circles, and we've had emails about this actually happening, and some cats, I guess, I'm guessing up to 24%, I guess, have been worked up for allergies or other conditions that were not necessary, and they've improved when just stopping the Solensia. So for that reason, I'd put it at a B, because it sounds like it does help a lot of my patients, and I have had several clients just come through, and it's just a part of their protocol. We note it, continue with your family vet, but just be aware that some cats do get at least some portion of cats, maybe unless they make some adjustments, are getting pretty itchy on it, and they just need to be off of it, but they don't need a full allergy workup.
And lastly, is Brandon again. I'm leaning towards B tier personally, just because I'm coming from more owner experience. My dog, he's a 14, well, almost 15-year-old border collie now, which is crazy. But aside from that, he has osteoarthritis, not a surprise. And he seemed to benefit from it when we started it, but then he had neurologic signs after, and it could have been incidental. There's a lot of factors that I don't know could have played a role there. So we took him off of it, but there's an FDA kind of statement that came out about concerns with using Librela and reporting neurologic signs. So that's just kind of an ongoing thing. These drugs are very new. We probably won't know about long-term side effects for a while. So just with all those caveats, I'd put it in B tier for now. So where did we kind of end up? I was B. Jeff?
I said B.
Chris?
I said A, but I would go B tier just with that as well. So I don't mind changing my answer on that one. I was having it at a low A.
What about you, Adam?
I had said A, but 3-1, and and I get where you guys are coming from. So yeah, we can throw it in B.
We'll kind of go faster on these last three because we're all very familiar with these last three. So last three are opioids, NSAIDs, and steroids. I'll just kind of talk about all three of them and my like pros and cons super fast. Opioids, I think, have like the best pain control overall, just period, end of story. But there are limited options for pets for like use at home, which is really difficult. Formulations can be difficult. And then, the elephant in the room is, abuse of these drugs by the owners or potential for abuse. Colorado specifically has some pretty strict like protocols, like how much you can prescribe, how many refills you can have. There's like a whole system that we have to report to whenever we prescribe these drugs, which is a complete pain in the back end. So with that, opioids, I would put in the A tier just because of their pain control, but all the baggage. NSAIDs also, I would put in A tier. Great pain control. There's a variety of uses. There's a variety of drugs as well. Not as many for cats, unfortunately, but a lot of choices for dogs. And I think they have good pain control, but GI side effects are real. I deal with that with my own dog. The same dog I mentioned before, he's on NSAIDs. He's been on NSAIDs for years. And he has intermittent GI flare-ups where I have to take him off the drug for a couple of days, let that calm down, sometimes do more supportive care. And then there are other things like elevated liver values can occur, liver damage. You have to be careful for dogs with liver disease or kidney disease. It can hurt the kidneys if you're not careful. So A tier for that one. And the only one I'd put in S tier is steroids. And I have an idea of someone else that might agree with that.
Who?
Steroids are great. You have to use them appropriately, and they're not perfect, but they have good pain relieving qualities. They have annoying side effects. They can cause serious things like diabetes in cats if they're used chronically at higher doses, but pets feel good on them, and they're cheap, and they're easy to administer. And there's not a lot of like baggage on the paperwork side of things with those drugs. So I think the only one I'd put in S tier would be steroids.
This is Adam, running through those three real quick as well. Opioids, I don't prescribe opioids a lot, but I agree with you. I think they're really good for pain management. The biggest concern you have is abuse, and again, there aren't a lot of at-home options there. So probably put that in the A tier. NSAIDs for me I prescribe them all the time. NSAIDs for me are S tier. I feel like they're a perfect go-between between controlling clinical signs and not overwhelming the system or being too hard on the system compared to steroids. So if I can get by with long-term management on a NSAID, I feel like it's one of the best things that's easily accessible to the client, relatively affordable, relatively milder side effects associated with it compared to things like steroids. So I use NSAIDs a lot. So I put that in S tier. Steroids, for all the reasons you said, I also put in S tier. For me personally, I prescribe them less commonly than NSAIDs because, if I can get by with an NSAID, that's what I'm going to do, mainly because of the side effects. Again, I don't want to risk causing iatrogenic Cushing's. I don't want to risk causing those severe elevations in liver values, which you can get with NSAIDs as well, but a little less commonly. So again, because of the side effect side of things and the long-term use side effects of things, I put steroids in the S, but maybe for me personally, a little under the NSAIDs.
This is Chris. When we were talking about this list, going through those three, right off the bat, I already said that in my head was steroids and NSAIDs were S tier just because of their versatility. There's so many different NSAIDs out there that you can try. If one doesn't work or causes GI upset, we can try a different NSAID. Same with steroids. Steroids is a blanket term. There's different steroids we can use too. They all have their side effects, but we know how to mitigate them as best we can, and we can switch it up and figure out ways to help out with it. So I think from like a versatility standpoint, and how well they work, ease of access, less hoops to jump through, those two are my S tier. And then, like everyone said so far, opioids are great. A lot of hoops to jump through. Can't really send any home. So A tier for them.
And this is Jeff. I get to round it out. So my S tier is the steroids. People think that dermatologists hate steroids. The truth is we love them, but they need to be used appropriately for all of the reasons everybody's mentioned. Like, I'm not trying to give anything Cushing's. I'm not trying to give them diabetes. So with great power comes great responsibility. Like, I have turned...
Okay, Spider-Man.
Thanks, Uncle Ben.
That's right. I feel like I've changed so many patients' lives with good, appropriate use of steroids. Because there are some conditions where you can go up to 10 mg per kg, which is going to squeeze a lot of people's adrenal glands in here. There's a pulse dosing for pemphigus that you can do it for 10 mg per kg for 3 days. That's well studied in a couple of different studies. And then you drop them down drastically back to like a mg per kg. And there's studies showing that you can do another big pulse dose like that. So again, you need to know what you're doing. You need to check blood, et cetera, et cetera. But that is like, I just love that you can take a fully crusted dog that's in so much discomfort and change them back into the old dog they used to be with good use of steroids. I use them for ears a lot and things like that. NSAIDs I put in A because A, I barely use them as a dermatologist. I'm often putting things when it's appropriate on a good dose of steroids and then taking them off of it and putting them onto something safer. Probably if we do an itch episode, we can switch back to that because obviously steroids are good for itchiness, but I'm trying not to keep things on long term. So for that reason, like an NSAID's probably better if I'm trying to control pain. I agree with y'all. A little bit safer long term than just putting things. I hate putting things on long term steroids without any control and just letting it go. I'd say I pretty much never do that. Almost never do like a maintenance forever steroid. Is what I'm always trying to avoid. But you can kind of do that with regular good checks of NSAIDs for pain control. And then opioids, I don't use very often, like maybe for pre-med of anesthesia. So I'm like, for me, it's a B, but it's mostly because I just don't really use them anymore. I don't hospitalize things that need to be on like a fentanyl drip or MLK drips. And just, I'm done.
Well, just to finalize everything, I'll switch the NSAIDs to S tier, mainly because as an owner, I have been using carprofen specifically for years for Zip and his pain, my dog that I mentioned earlier, and it's been the tried and true drug. And I bet a lot of owners would attest to that. Despite the side effects, like we said, none of these drugs are perfect. I would say for opioids, I have been able to use the best way I've been able to use it to go home. Then this is more from like internship residency experience, is like a fentanyl patch for like short bursts of pain relief. But again, I think we all agree A tier for opioids, S tier for steroids, and for NSAIDs. And then just to remind everyone, gabapentin was in A tier. The conjoined glucosamine supplements and monoclonal antibodies were in B tier. Then tramadol is just sitting by itself in C tier. So this was a fun exercise, guys. I enjoyed it.
That was fun.
Yeah, I liked it.
Well, thanks for listening, everyone.
Thank you once again for joining us on the Dogtor Bros.
If you would like to support us, please share this episode with others who may be interested in today's topic, and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Would you like to influence our next episode? We love hearing your opinions and thoughts. Your comments may be our next topic.
Please leave us suggestions via email at thedoctorbros@gmail.com, DM us at thedoctorbros on Instagram, or leave us comments on our posts. Again, this is Brandon. You can reach me at Dr. Mason IM on Instagram.
And this is Chris, and you can reach me on Instagram at dr.chrishernandez.
And this is Jeff. You can find me on TikTok or Instagram at DermDrJeff, DermDogtorJeff.
And this is Adam. You can reach me on Instagram at DrAdamDVM. That's DrAdamDVM.